This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so I think maybe a few people will still be signing on, but first of all, to all of you who are joining in, welcome. It's a delight to have this opportunity to speak with Nina and Maria about this very important and hopefully very influential film that they've made, Brainwashed. I would like, first of all, for Nina to be able to meet everybody. If you would just kindly go around. I don't know whether everybody's picture is the same on the screen in my order, but let me call on you just to say who you are and hello, and very briefly what you do, but I mean very briefly. So let's start out with Marilyn Ferdinand.
That's me. Hello. I'm in Chicago. I write for Cinephile, and Nina, you probably know Kat Sachs. She's also an AWFJ member. I work with her pretty closely at Cinephile, and I write for AWFJ.
Liz Braun.
Here, ma'am. Hi, Ms. Menkes. A pleasure to see you. I write for the Toronto Sun. It's a daily newspaper, and it's part of a national chain in Canada.
And Martha Baker, please.
I'm Martha Baker with KDHX in St. Louis, Missouri.
And Leslie Comemal.
I write for the AWFJ and also for the Motion Picture Association's The Credits. And I own an gallery.
And Diane Carson.
That's me, St. Louis, Missouri, also KDHX in St. Louis, retired film teacher.
Lauren King.
Hi, I'm Lauren King. I write for several publications. I've met Maria and I just interviewed Nina for the Boston Globe. I'm a freelancer, so I have several places I write for, including AWFJ.
Great.
And Betsy Bosdeck.
That's me. I am the editorial director and head of ratings and reviews at Common Sense Media, where I've been for 16 years. So I edit more than write, but my writing is almost all for the AWFJ. So it's a fun muscle to exercise there.
Anne Lewinson. Muted, you're muted.
Hi, Nina. Hi, everyone. I'm a freelancer in New York, and I write about film and visual art.
Are there other people here? Because that's all I can see.
Oh, it's Valerie. I just came.
Hi, Valerie. Please announce yourself.
Hi, this is Valerie Calfrin. I had the pleasure of listening to you during the film festival circuit, Nina. So I'm happy you have distribution for the film. And I'm based in Tampa, Florida. And I was a former crime reporter before writing for AWFJ, and also reviewing for sites such as in their own league, and I contribute to the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter.
Valerie, can you show us your face, please, because we're all trying to be present as much as possible. If it's possible, if you could add your video. And did somebody else just enter?
You missed Lanita.
And Betsy.
Lonita, where are you? I don't see you. Lonita, introduce yourself, please.
You can't see me? How about
now? I can.
Hello. Hi, I'm Lonita Cook, and I'm a film critic in the Kansas City area. I contribute to KCTV5. I also am on the committee for Grow Kansas Film. I'm saying this to say, hey, Melanie, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you.
So that's it, I guess, for those. There were
Emma Meyer.
Jennifer.
Oh, Betsy Pickle. Announce yourself, please.
Hi, Betsy Pickle. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I write for a local website and freelance other places, and sometimes for AWFJ.
So that's who we are. Having this conversation, and let's just get down to it right away. I'm going to start out, and then people have sent in questions, and I'll try to have them ask the questions because their thoughts about it are different than mine are in what they're seeking. Nina, the film focuses on how cinematography or the camera angle influences the subliminal messaging of a film. leading to social behavior. How, in your opinion, does that work?
Well, I'm not sure how it works. I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but there has been a lot of research that shows that when you are in when you're watching a film and when you're in this state of absorbing a filmic story, messages infiltrate and actually impact behavior and intention and worldview and perception. I mean, I don't know the exact, biological, psychological mechanism for that, but I think that we all know that representation is really important. I mean, as I believe that the Nazis forbade non-Aryan representation for at least for a period of time, and there was a reason for that. When you see yourself represented, you're empowered or you're disempowered depending on what you see. And this level of representation, which is kind of the meta message, is the one that a lot of time kind of slips by, and you don't maybe notice it. That's why we have in the film, even if she's a protagonist, she can be shot in this way where she's positioned as the object, where she's disempowered through photography. So the main idea is that it's once you see it, once it's pointed out, it's pretty hard not to see it, but most people don't really pay attention, or they block it out. Like, I've heard quite a few times from people like, oh my God, Carrie, I love that film, I totally forgot about the shower scene. Or Blade Runner 1982, a lot of people told me, like, I love that film and I blocked out that scene that you've included, because it's like, but the fact that you block it out consciously doesn't mean it doesn't impact unconsciously. It goes in.
So, Martha, Diane Carson had a question that she sent in having to do with the choice of images that you, or the choice of examples that you made, that they're examples that we all can recognize very easily. But Martha, I'm sorry, Diane, you were questioning how we discern or receive those images that might be more insidious. Could you comment?
Yeah, that's right. I'll just add to this that exactly what you just said, Nina, about how I taught this ever since film school in 1980, and the students would still come back and, yeah, but I still love that movie. It's all okay. But what I was hoping to maybe hear a little bit more from you about were more subtle but equally insidious examples. I mean, I'm thinking of details even like costuming and, not even just the nude body and just the camera angle. And I'm even thinking of, I think it was Lucy Fisher's excellent article about The Lady Vanishes, saying that at some point in every movie, the woman is either going to be reduced to tears or terror. Just so many ways that the rug is pulled out from under them.
I'm not sure there's a question in there.
I'm not sure that there's a question.
It sounds like a statement, which of course I agree with.
But are there any other examples that you can give specifically that have occurred to you? That are more I don't know, they're more subtle, more insidious, more subliminal even, for that matter.
You mean perhaps, Nina, like the use of music and sound?
But I mean, we do cover that in the film, like the way that sound can, most people will not notice that until you point it out. The way like the way that we dissected Raging Bull, how she's not given a voice and you think she's far away and it turns out men who are far away do have a voice. Or, Wonder Woman, she's supposed to be power. She's supposed to be, the fighter, but she's dressed up like a little doll and she's completely sexualized.
And how they use
what kind of subtle you mean?
How they use, and how music comes in and the slow motion bathtub scene that I'm just trying to throw some things out there.
Yeah, I mean,
that
those are
people can look
examples
for.
of
Yeah.
film. But it's, I mean, it can work both ways, I have to say, because I just saw Don't Worry, Darling yesterday or Sunday. And I was like, oh, interesting. I mean, here's a film that does not use, what we could summarize as male gaze photography. There's even a scene with Florence Pugh. I don't know how to say her name.
Cute. Yeah.
Q. Okay. She's in the bathtub, and that's a moment with a male director, 100% you would have gotten the nude body pan. And they sort of made sure that you don't see her naked body at all. And so there was like really an effort, it seemed to me, on the level of photography, leaving out the Busby Berkeley or whatever his name is, the parts. There was a real effort not to photograph the woman that way, but then she falls into the trap on the level of script. The script to me is really problematic, which we're not here to talk about, but I'm just saying, like, it can be in the photography, it can be in the script. So of course, when it's in both, when it's in everything, that's when you get, Blade Runner 2049, right? Or whatever. But sometimes you have, it's like the script is awful, but the photography's okay in the sense of, it's not overtly objectifying the woman through shot design. So, I mean, there are all these different combos that can happen, right?
Leslie, you had a question?
Well, I'm just going to keep writing my questions that have to do with the questions, but I loved what you chose. Hi, Nina. I loved what you chose for the film, but I know you must have had about 2 million opportunities. And so I'm just a little curious. I mean, I've read a lot of your interviews about the film, and I've done a lot of research on it. And I know some of the things you didn't include, but I would love to hear what made it. Was that just a matter of clearance, or was it really just more about trying to have a balance of the different subjects and the ways in which these issues crop up in film?
Well, we really, it was sometimes the kind of thing where there was a clip that was great, but just for the, just really more like the editing flow, it didn't quite fit in, or it raised issues that we didn't really want to get into at that moment, or like one thing that we ended up not having, like a real Western, like Sergio Leone, for example, isn't in. He could have easily been in. Like McCabe and Mrs. Miller is a perfect example, and it wasn't in for, I can't remember why. So there are like some of these real classic films that could have worked perfectly. So I just think that what we were really looking when we were trying in choosing the clips and in doing the editing, it was really all about, like, does this idea flow into the next idea? And so, for example, there was the section on the rape culture section. So there were a lot of examples in that section that we decided not to include because they were sort of almost too, I don't know how to say it, triggery. We wanted to sort of try to avoid the situation where you have, you're making your point, but you're actually doing it to the audience too, like Blonde, So how do you do that? So sometimes some of the so-called worse examples we didn't put in. There was a film, I can't remember which one, but the women had been murdered, and they're like lying on the chase lounge, and they look like Vogue models, and they're absolutely flawless, and they just have a little blood, but they're dead and they've been murdered. Yeah. And then Cecily was like, no, that's just gonna, in a way, take people out of the film. So it was really a lot about the flow and the editing. Like, how do we get that flow to continue and take you all the way to the end, so that you're getting all the messages, but you're not sort of thrown out of it for one reason or another. So it was more that kind of decision, because obviously, like you said, there was zillions of possible examples.
Well, ever since the film, I've watched entire oeuvre of filmmakers and considered how it relates to your film. Like you could do, and you could have made the whole film about Alfred Hitchcock. You could have made the whole film about Westerns, because, and about, I won't watch procedural films, because a lot of police procedurals, because it's, I call it the dead-eyed nude girl, the dead-eyed naked girl. You know, there's so much of it. It's so proliferate in the subject and in the film. You could have done that for even specific filmmakers, but I loved the way that you created an arc by what you chose in the film.
Thank you.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Credit the editor, Cicely Rett.
Yeah.
I think she was the one who really made that happen.
Nina, can you tell us about some of the male filmmakers who possibly avoid this, or has there been a change that you've noticed over time? I mean, these camera angles are still being taught in school, in film school. Is there a change in that? And have any directors, male directors that you've been seeing lately, sort of shifted their point of view, their camera?
You know, first of all, I sort of have to, I mean, maybe Maria has some thoughts, but I have admittedly been completely underwater with Brainwashed for about 2 to 3 years. So besides looking for film clips, I haven't seen that many new films, but I did see Blonde the other day, and you know, I can say that Blonde ticks every single box. You know, it ticks point of view, it ticks you know, subject object, it ticks obviously, you know, fragmentation, it ticks sexualization, slow-mo, you know, the inside of the vagina being the point of view. Well, I was discussing with someone, we weren't sure if it was the point of view of the fetus or the point of view of the abortionist, but it was definitely not the point of view of the Marilyn Monroe character, you know, and the fact that she's always flawless and she's always 2D light, and even if no matter what's going on, she's always in this perfect 2D light, looking flawless, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, you know, a huge film that just came out by a man. Obviously, it's been kind of trashed by everybody, but gee, I don't even know.
I would just add, if I may, Nina, I would just add to it that throughout, you know, the 120 odd years of cinematic history, there have been many men who have made incredibly beautiful films that have not hypersexualized and objectified and fragmented women. And there have been lots of women directors who have done it. So, you know, I don't think that, you know, we can, you know, just talk in terms of, you know, male gaze, female gaze, and this one does it well, and this one, you know, does it wrong. You know, it really is that we women directors, and as a person who went for, you know, graduate film school at UCLA, where Nina went, and studied, you know, the canon, we were specifically, you know, taught how to make movies and how to shoot things. And because most of our professors were men and we were studying a totally male canon, we did tend to, you know, replicate the way things were being done that did objectify and sexualize women. So I feel like it, you know, it's not black and white, you know, it's, you know, it's a spectrum, and some people have not been guilty of it, and other people have, and I think it's just kind of, you know, imagination.
I mean, maybe some of the people in this room can name some male directors who don't do it. I mean, I think at the minimum, it's very rare to find a male director who doesn't at least follow the law of age. You know, I just saw the Crimes of, what's it called? Crimes of the Future, and you know, that one we could talk about if I mean, that one sort of fails the test, but one of the things in that film is, I noticed, like, you know, Viggo Mortensen is 63, Lea Seydoux is 37, and Kristen Stewart is 32, and that's like very standard, you know. So even film, you know, even a director, let's say like Bergman, who, you know, I think some of his films are incredible, like Persona, I've always greatly admired. But that was one of the shots, for example, that we ended up taking out of Brainwashed because we had a section on age difference, and there's a shot in Persona where you have the male film director, the husband, and he looks about 65 to 70, and then you have Liv Ullmann, who's probably 35, and and then the other woman who's also like 30 or something. So we had a whole section where we showed from the great masterpieces age difference, and it's always exactly one way. And so I'm to find I don't know. I mean, do you have an idea of a male director who doesn't do it, or
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that.
I mean, I can't really think of anyone offhand because I think that.
I mean, I can.
I think it's significant that you can't think of somebody. I think it's significant that you can't think of somebody straight up, because it pretty much means that that. And I will say that the Alliance of Women Film Journalists has an egregious age difference award at the end of the year. And some of our members even have objected to that because they don't think it's relevant. So I mean, I think what you're saying is important. Yeah.
Jennifer, Betsy has a question on how to shift this perspective.
Betsy, please ask. Betsy?
She's on mute.
Sorry,
Betsy, unmute. Yeah, unmute.
Okay, let me go back to the chat here.
This is not coming through. I'm gonna
how we
Betsy,
the video is frozen there. Yeah, let me ask the question. I understand what the question is. The question is, how do you shift the perspective?
We as film journalists and
how do you shift the perspective is the question.
Brainwashed.
Yeah, I mean, we think that
our culture shift this perspective.
Everybody but me put on mute, please, for the moment.
The follow up.
Betsy, the question from Betsy is, how do we shift the perspective? Nina, please unmute.
I mean,
unmute, Nina.
I mean, you've got.
I can speak to that a little bit while Nina's unmuting herself. I mean, I think the way we change this is we make change is by having these conversations, by people like Nina Menkes making this brilliant movie that articulates what this issue is and lays it out. I mean, it's like we women are always reinventing the wheel over and over again. We've got to really try to learn from each other at some point. But I also think the way that we make change is by attacking it through legislative efforts. The work that I've done getting the ACLU and the EEOC to investigate systemic discrimination against women directors. This has been incredibly, important, and you kind of have to attack the pocketbooks of executives and all of the different institutions in Hollywood to force this. 80% of the entertainment media in our world that's distributed around our world comes out of Hollywood. So just by finding ways to enforce Title VII and create equal employment opportunity for women, whether it's on amongst actors or it's directors or above or below the line, this is the most important way, besides Brainwashed and making films like it, that we can affect real change.
Valerie had put up a question to you specifically, Maria, about how things have changed since all of that legislation and all of that action went by. I'm going to just ask questions on behalf of people because it's too time consuming to shift off like that. But Maria, can you answer that question for Valerie, please?
The change since 2014 ACLU investigation and their letter, 15-page letter that was published in the New York Times, has been absolutely, it's been an earthquake. It's been groundbreaking, how it transformed Hollywood in every single way. I mean, I would venture as far to say that Me Too likely would not have happened if it hadn't been for the work of the ACLU and the EEOC, just completely shaking up the very foundations of Hollywood. We see it in the numbers. The numbers went from absolutely terrible, 1.9% women directing feature films, averaging out 4% in around 2014. And in 2019, we had something like 16 or 18% women directing. I mean, all those movies that came out, like Wonder Woman, all these, women directors who had been largely out of work and all of a sudden were making tentpole studio movies. We see extraordinary change also in the government of the Directors Guild of America, completely different. We had a couple women on the national board. Now it's 50-50 in all of the different areas of governance in the Directors Guild. They have just moved women to the forefront. So the change has been absolutely radical, and it's laid the groundwork for people to take very, very seriously magnificent, radical movies like Brainwashed that spell it out. So it's just been an extraordinary time of change.
Yeah, congratulations on that. Nina, did you want to add?
I wanted to add that, Brainwash would never have gotten financed. There's no doubt in my mind it would never have gotten financed before that whole ACLU EEOC thing and the Me Too movement, which sort of came on top of it. It never would have been financed, and if it would have been financed, which it wouldn't have, but it would not have gone to Sundance and Berlin and Karlovy Vary and da 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 da. It went to like major festivals, and now we got a distributor. That's somewhat of a miracle, and it certainly has to do with these actions, because it would not have it never would have gotten made before 2017, in my opinion.
What do you think? Who is the audience then when this film is distributed? How are we to get people and to see the film, and how are we to allow or encourage them to embrace what the film is saying?
Well, I mean, I think that the film sets out, a pretty airtight argument for what it's saying. I mean, you can't really deny, if you see the film, you can't deny that these techniques have been used. And they've been used throughout time, and they're pervasive, and they're in a great majority of the so-called masterpieces that we see. And some of those masterpieces I do love. I want to emphasize, I love Vertigo and Metropolis. These are not films that I'm saying are bad or should not be viewed or anything like that. So you can't really argue with it, although people have tried to argue with it. They don't, the people who argue with it are just, they try to dismiss it as, oh, it's just stupid. Or, it's, I mean, they can't, I don't really know how you can argue with it, but I think that there's a certain, it recalls when I was a graduate student at UCLA, and I made my film Magdalena Viraga, which is in the film. It's the prostitute who hates her work. There's a scene of just, it's my sister's face, and she's having sort of alienated sex. And I showed that film at UCLA Film School, and this young undergrad guy stood up. He was really upset, and he said, you do things that even Brian De Palma doesn't do. This is the most violent film I've ever seen in my life. Which, I'll never forget that moment, because I was like, wow, there is a little bit of violence in the film, but the violence that he's talking about it's a violence to his worldview. But interestingly, if we look at like the reaction to the movie, it seems like the people who freak out about it are less men. It's more like women. And I think that women have some women have, internalized this and for some reason want to defend it. So who's the audience? I mean, I always say people who go see movies is the audience, which is everybody. It's not everyone is a filmmaker, but everybody goes to see movies. And I think one encouraging thing that we've heard again and again is that, after I saw your film, I couldn't blot it out, and so it's sort of like, some people might feel like you ruined the pleasure that I had in just going to a film and, not thinking about these things. And maybe that makes them mad. I don't know.
And we're finding that men really, really love this movie, Brainwashed. I mean, the film doesn't single out men and blame them. It really is a conversation piece that fascinates everybody. And so I think, and young people are really, really, extremely excited about the film. And people our age, are, thank God this film has finally got made. Thank God somebody finally did this. And so I'm feeling that we have really a very broad audience. And I also feel that it's going to have a groundswell, in the coming, decades. It's such an important film. I think it's going to transform the way people look at cinema and make cinema, going forward around the world.
Thank you.
How do you think critics figure into this distribution, into raising awareness about the film? I have had conversations with a number of male critics about this film.
Oh.
And frankly, I have found that they don't get it. And I am horrified by that. I argue with them. I'll argue with them until I'm blue in the face. But it's very difficult to get that shift, that awareness, that consciousness into play. How can we help with that?
I mean, I don't know. To me, I remember one person wrote in some review, like early on coming out of Sundance, they said, Menkes notably does not present counterpoint because there isn't one. It's like, exactly right. You can't argue with what we're saying, but people still manage to argue with it, or, they just can't. I don't know who you're referring to, but, if it's attacking your whole worldview, it's kind of, I guess it's a lot to swallow. So someone like me, I noticed this, when I was 8 years old. I don't know why, but like, to me, it was like always very obvious. But I think some people are invested in, like I guess if you haven't really seen it before, because there are all these groups of people who come up, like we're mobbed, like we haven't had that many in-person screenings, by the way, because of COVID, but recently I was at the Helsinki Film Festival. We were literally mobbed by people who were crying. Women were crying, and I don't mean a few tears, but like sobbing and saying thank you for articulating this thing that I felt. They're talking about that weird subject-object thing, and that you go see a movie and you kind of like it, but you kind of like feel like weird, and like you don't have the words for it. So I think those people really love the film. It's like, oh, you articulated for me this thing that I kind of intuited, that was like almost up at consciousness but wasn't quite at consciousness, and now it's bursting into consciousness, and I'm like weeping, and I'm not exaggerating when I say, there were women weeping. And then you have people who are like, oh yeah, I knew that before already, or they just want to dismiss it because it's threatening. Maybe I don't really know. I mean, what can you say to those people? I don't know. I mean, the more people who support the film and say it's important, you know, it's a game changer, it's, you know, it needs to be listened to. I mean, the more people who say that, the better for the film, you know, so that it can't just be dismissed. I mean, it has not been dismissed. I mean, it's shown in all these major festivals, and it's but nevertheless, you know, I don't really know. What do you think, Maria?
I mean, I just think of, you know, so many people who watched the movie who hadn't thought about this issue. Just, I had no idea. You know, I just had no idea. It completely blew my mind to think about these things that never entered my mind. You know, and while I'm saying that, I really encourage you all to watch, if you haven't seen it, This Changes Everything, 2019 on Netflix, which is the most comprehensive film ever made about the issue of gender equality in Hollywood, and a great foundation for Brainwashed too. But it's just, we have to open people's eyes, and the way you open their eyes, as Lynn Littman says, you know, once you see, you can't unsee. So it's just, you know, presenting these arguments, these, you know, watertight arguments. It's like Nina left no stone unturned in creating an absolutely, you know, credible argument. She sometimes, what you just sometimes describe yourself in the film as being a litigator, no, a
Prosecutor.
a prosecutor. I love that.
Yeah. You're half a prosecutor and half a Rebbitzin. But
yeah, leave no stone unturned though.
But so like, you're a prosecutor, you're presenting your case, and you're going to win, and you do win.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, someone's written here about film schools. I think that you know, Kino Lorber is partnering with Canopy, and Canopy's the biggest educational distributor in North America. I believe it's North America and not only USA, not sure. But anyway, they're a major, and they have plans. They also frankly believe that they are all hyped up about it. I mean, they think it's going to have a huge impact, and it's going to go to film schools and libraries all over the country. And that's their job, and that's what they're doing. They're getting it out there. And they have actually, if you guys are interested, we can hook you with Canopy, because I believe they're having like a special Canopy sneak preview for academics.
Oh, absolutely. We need that. Yeah, we need that.
So, yeah, we should, Emma maybe can send, Emma, do you have that information from Canopy? We can maybe,
it's one of them.
It's, know if it's supposed to be secret or what is the deal exactly with it. It's a little confusing to me. They're sort of having a secret like sneak peek for academics, but then it's gonna go out to
we can sort that out afterwards. Yeah, we'll definitely get that information. Okay. There was a question that was posed, and I can't remember, forgive me, colleagues here, who posed it, but there are a number of women now who are taking up, actors, celebrities, whatever, who are taking up production. Are there companies producing films that differ from the standard tropes that we see as disgusting in Brainwashed?
Well, you mean like Jessica Chastain and...
Well, so many movements. I mean, what I used to say is, you know, back in 2013, 2014, when I was first talking about this, is, you know, 4% of feature films are being directed by women. And of that 4%, almost 100% are either movie stars or pop stars or the relatives of movie moguls. There was like 0% of the rest of us being able to elbow our ways into these directing careers that we had, you know, fought so hard for and gone to for many, many years to graduate film schools. And so I think women movie stars have profited massively. And the whole ecosystem shifted when all of this shifted. It was like all the executives and agents and, managers, you were like, oh, how can we profit off this? And so then you've got, all these incredible movie stars, Jessica Chastain, but, Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston and, so many of them who have launched these incredibly lucrative and really excellent production companies that are producing series, television, and feature films. So that has been explosive. But it's always wonderful when movies when any woman does something great, but it's a little less difficult if you are a massive celebrity.
We have a list of female-directed films now that we are considering for our year-end awards at AWFJ that is now over 500 films. Those films are not recognized elsewhere. And
Globally.
It's really shocking.
This year, globally? Wow.
Yeah. And it's just shocking. They're not included in the statistics that are shown in any of the major statistics labs, USC, San Diego. I don't know why. How do we get that that awareness of the proliferation of female-directed films with female perspectives into the public eye? Do you have an idea about that?
Well, I'll just say one little thing about that, Nina, and then let you say I've been sounding very rah-rah, we won, and things are great. But I think everybody here on this Zoom call knows that, things are not great. We are still totally marginalized, making some headway, but we suffer every single step of the way in getting films produced and distributed. We have less opportunity for starters, fewer screenwriters, fewer production companies that care. We have get lower budgets. We have a more difficult time getting distribution. We get less P&A. What is it? 15% of film critics are women, to 85 men or whatever that statistic is, so every single step of the way we have to fight, we have to battle, and we have to keep on doing it. And to me, it feels like, and many of us here who, came out of the women's lib movement of the 1970s, and there was all of this advancement. And then it's like 10 years forward, 20 years back, 10 years forward, 20 years back. And it's like you fight the battle for the next generation, and then they feel like, oh, everything's fine. And then we have to come back and fight it again. So I just think we have to be really perseverant. We've got to get Nina's movie out there everywhere we can.
Yeah, thank you very much for raising our issue, which is a very unequal representation in the in the field of film criticism. We're fighting that battle all the time as well. And we are, that's one of the things that the Alliance is really working on. Hang on for a sec, Marilyn. How can, no, Marilyn, go ahead. What's your question? Sorry.
Yeah, my question, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, I know you dealt with, I think it was Shaft in Brainwashed. I'm not sure, but I'm wondering, have you seen any differences in films by directors of color, male directors of color, or even female directors of color? Was this, the shots and the sound and the music, was that all in keeping with these standard tropes that we have?
Well, I have to, disclaimer that I'm not, we didn't have a budget, which would probably be $1 million in itself, to do sort of the, the massive kind of research to really track that kind of thing and do statistics and do, like, I don't know. I can just tell you my general impression. The film you're talking about, I think, is Superfly. You can see, your average day at the Cannes Film Festival. You can see the great Asian directors doing it. We've seen Black directors doing it. I put two huge examples in Brainwashed, which is Spike Lee's famous Do the Right Thing, and Superfly. They're both like huge cult classics. Huge, Do the Right Thing is on everybody's like best film list. And then you have directors like, someone like Julie Dash with, 1991 Daughters of the Dust. She was doing something different way back then, and nobody cared until very recently when her film was restored and re-released. Or, my film Queen of Diamonds, same thing. It got a lot of attention on the re-release, but when me and Julie were at Sundance in 1991, nobody cared, and so I think there's always been people, and I'm sure men and women, but I'm thinking more of women filmmakers through the years, and we include, of course, some of the key obvious points of feminist filmmaking, such as Wanda and Agnes Varda, and of course, Jean Dielman and so on, in Brainwashed, to say, women have been going against the grain from day one, but the percentage of women who did it, and then the percentage of women whose films got any kind of level of attention, after they did it. I remember in 1997, I was at the Rotterdam International Film Festival with my film, The Bloody Child, and they had a lounge for the filmmakers. And the lounge was this like big room. It was sort of round. And they had created these 6 foot high and 2 feet wide life-size portraits of film directors. I don't know if any of you were at the Rotterdam Film Festival that year. And it was one after another all the way around the room. They were all men. There were some, mainly white men, but there's some Asian men. I think, there may have been, Spike Lee may have been in there. I can't remember. But there was one woman. It was Chantal Ackerman. And all the rest were men. And I walked in there and I was like, oh my God, this is so oppressive. And Berenice Reynal, the film critic and friend of mine, I said, I'm going to do an action. I wanted to get like a red marker and sort of make the sign of the male, circle with a little arrow. I was to get a red marker and like mark every single one to make the point. And she was like, Nina, don't do that. You'll be persona non grata forever. Don't you do it. She got me scared and I didn't do it. But I mean, that's, that was the atmosphere in which I made my films, and I didn't compromise at all. And there were these few who sort of managed to poke out, like Chantal Ackerman, Agnes Varda, but we don't even know probably, about a lot of the filmmakers, because the other thing I just want to agree with what Maria said is, like, you basically have to come from a rich family to be a filmmaker. I'm not. I have no money whatsoever, and I live in a rental place, and I barely make it through the month, and I never have managed to barely live for my films, and then people like, there's so many, and these are women that I respect. I want to make a big point that I absolutely love. Laura Poitras, she's a fabulous filmmaker, and Lucretia Martel is a fabulous filmmaker, and they're I can't think offhand. I mean, those two I know are from very, very, very wealthy families. How are you supposed to manage if you're not from a very, very wealthy family, and you're a woman and you're doing something different?
And then for everything we say, the issues of women of color is even so much more pronounced, and even more work has to be done in that arena.
But like Julie was kind of completely forgotten on that note until that whole recent thing with Beyonce, and then she got recognized for her work, which was radical from the beginning. You know?
Well, people were actively seeking out women, and especially women of color amongst directors, because the numbers in the Directors Guild and coming out in the statistics was so profoundly bad. So I think women of color have had the best jump up.
Might it be interesting to have another, almost like you said, a counterpoint to Brainwashed about what female filmmaking looks like and how they do shooting as a instructive to people on other ways to do it?
Well, I do think, you know, that this film is not supposed to be the last word or anything. It's supposed to be a conversation starter. You know, I would welcome more films on this topic and going down some of the side streets that we were not able to go down. You know, there were a lot of side streets that we didn't end up going down just because we were trying to, like, you know, basically stay on point and keep it at, you know, around 140 minutes. So there, you know, that said, again, you know, we don't want to be essentialist and say, you know, women filmmakers do it this way and men filmmakers do it that way. I mean, certainly lots of female filmmakers reproduce this stuff, and, you know, some don't, though, you know, and vice versa. I mean, I can't think offhand of a male director who doesn't do it.
Yeah, and
but you said you could think of, can any of you guys think of one offhand?
I just want to accentuate that I really loved the way Nina, you know, exemplified this problem using both women and male directors, and people of all different races and ethnicities. You know, I think it isn't that women do it right and men do it wrong. I spoke of this earlier, but I think it's just like, you know, the LGBTQ movement is trying to make the point that, you know, things can be on a spectrum. We don't have to have this monolithic, you know, gender dualism where, you know, this is right and this is wrong. It's just not accurate.
Right.
So I think I really appreciate Nina's sensitivity to that and having executed that argument so beautifully.
I wonder whether there might be some benefit to establishing or hooking up with the reframe, for example, stamp of approval, to include not only the number of women who are working behind the scenes and the thematic focus of a film, but also the perspective, the camera work, and how it actually influences what's being delivered to an audience. Do you think that there's a way to do that, or would that be valuable?
Oh, I have mixed feelings about that, to be honest, because I think that my position is that absolutely want people to be aware, and I hope that the movie illuminates. And I think that when you bring consciousness to something, it changes, it shifts, you
Right.
know. I've done 17 years of psychoanalysis, which I think is a great thing. I love it. I loved it. I'm done now. But, you know, that was what I learned from that process too, on a very personal level. It's like when light shines on something, it changes. You cannot keep, it's not ever going to be the same again, you know. My only thing with, I mean, I get your point, and I think that critics should discuss these things when they're looking at a film. I hesitate to say, you know, let's have a little checklist like, did you fragment a female body? You're bad, you know, because I just don't want to think of it in that kind of police way. But having said that, do I think you should include those kind of, you know, reflections when you're writing a review and you're thinking about the totality of a film and what it's conveying? I hope yes. I think it can be a tool, if you're sort of like, why is this film so annoying? Like, wow, it never shows her point of view, even when we're inside her own vagina, it's somebody else's point of view, right? Blonde. So like, I think if it could be, a tool to aid in thinking about a film that you're watching, and that, there's another thing that I just want to bring up because it's come up, which is that, of course, these shots, does context affect how they're read? So you have, of course, the whole point of Brainwashed is we're not going to look at the context, even though the context is generally a sexist context. But we're purposely not looking at the context. We're just saying, look at this meta message that has been repeated, regardless of context, right? But then at the same time, that's the point of the film, and purposely so. But if you're looking at an individual film, on the level, if you're writing about an individual film, and there's a shot like that, and the context, would the context shift the meaning somewhat? Yes, the context shifts the meaning. That doesn't mean it's not there, So I just think it's I just would be a little reluctant at having it be sort of too rigid, like, oh, you have 3 shots of, her butt, so therefore, you're film out, which, might be how I really feel about a film, but I wouldn't want that sort of, like you said, that rigidity of an approach. I think it's more like to have this whole shot design method that we have, that is taught in film schools and that's been reproduced in film after film, and we do make the point that regardless of the context, we're getting that message. Yes, that's our point. But you're looking at this film right here. Like, I just watched Sharp Stick by Lena Dunham the other day, and I thought, I thought it was quite interesting, and she doesn't really do that kind of shot, but at the very beginning she does. At the very, very beginning, the first shot is like close up of the girl, very babified, very close up on her body. Was that really necessary? Is that the right way to start that film? I don't know. That was her decision. Does that decision obliterate all the rest of the film? It's just, I just sort of noticed it. It's like, oh, and how many women have started their films with close-ups of female body parts, like whether it's Lost in Translation or Sharp Stick or some other films that.
And how many films are started either directed by men or by women within the first 5 minutes of the film, there's a woman falling into bed with a guy, and a close-up of her body, yeah.
On the other hand, the way Nina ends the film, is really about, not trying to tell, in no way want to tell anybody what to do. It's just to look inside yourself and become conscious and to become aware, of what it is that one is doing and that we all are doing. In no way would either Nina or I should speak for myself, ever want to censor creative expression in any way whatsoever. That is as fundamental as freedom of speech. The people should explore and do whatever it is that they want to do. But I think watching this film helps you open up your eyes and connect with your consciousness and to wake up.
And that is what we must all do. Absolutely. And I got a signal from Melanie that we've got to wrap, but boy, oh boy, I can't thank you two enough. And I can't thank Emma and Kate enough for being with us today and for sharing your thoughts. You are both magnificent, and you are going to change things for us and with us.
You guys are too. With you. I like that, because we're all up against it, and the women are the only the only oppressed people who are a majority on planet Earth. I mean, it's just like, what's fucking wrong with us? Like, so,
And on that note, amen.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Be in touch.
Yes, we will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks, all of you.